on Ag Talk, we're talking about 4-Hers turning into leaders and educate them culturally. So stay tuned, we'll be right back. Hello everyone, thanks for watching Agri Talk today. We're going to be talking about 4-Hers today. Mike, you had a daughter that was in 4-H. I went through 4-H, did animals, did not get to do a lot of the extracurricular activities that 4-Hers have able to be doing today, like leadership and
camps
and a lot of extra camps and all these other things which is, I think, a great thing for these kids to learn as they come up. When I went through it, it was basically, take your animals, educate, yourself about the animals and things like that. So, but there's so many more things that 4-H has for our teens today. So, and today we've got a guest from Warren County. Warren County Extension office there. Steve Brady is the 4-H educator. And welcome, Steve. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you. It's great to be here with you and with all the viewers. It's great to be here.
Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself. I hear you've been with the Extension, OSU Extension for quite a while. So can you give us a little detail, how long you've been with Extension and all of the parts that you've played?
Sure. I have been with Extension for 18 years now. As of, actually, May 7th was my 18th year anniversary. I've been all of that here in Warren County in the southwest part of the state, and with the 4-H Youth Development Program here. Although I'm not originally from Ohio, which I'm originally from North Carolina, I have kind of really adopted and adapted well to working with youth and with families, not only just here in Warren County, but really all over the state with the 4-H program. So it's been a great career so far.
Awesome. What brought you to being a 4-H leader?
Well, my background before I started in Extension, I served a period of time as a director of camps in North Carolina, and really found that that leadership and that development for youth happens a lot outside the classroom, and that's what really attracted me to 4-H and the whole learn by doing motto. The working with person's hands and adapting different learning styles, I thought was a great way to build leaders, and 4-H really fit that with their philosophy and with the whole getting in there and doing it instead of just learning about it kind of model.
I see. And as we talked about, they have different kind of specialties now, and you were saying that you do a lot with leadership for your 4-H group, or not one group. You have how many teens do you deal with?
We've got
and
close
not
to
only
1,000
teens,
here,
I guess.
1,000 here in Warren County. And we have a pretty strong, traditional, what people would call a traditional program with the county fair and people raising animals and taking projects to the fair, as well as a strong camping program. We have 3 different camps that we offer during the summer. We have a horse camp, a day camp, and as well as a county outdoor kind of in the cabins, in the woods camp as well. So we offer those things. I was hired on as a second 4-H educator, and really to focus on the camps and also looking at new audiences for 4-H, knowing that youth, particularly in our county, it's suburban, not as many people have farms or have ability to raise animals, but still looking at ways to incorporate youth into leadership that 4-H offers. So I do a host of different types of programming in the schools, whether that be leadership or team building, as well as looking at different ways of getting youth outside the county. So I do a number of trips and immersion programs around the state, and as well as overseas, and looking at really incorporating youth into learning about the world beyond just Warren County.
How do you, what would be your first contact with a child? Is it mostly through the parents who have had exposure to 4-H, or it's people that go to fairs? There's in marketing it to new people, because a lot of people might have thought that it's only for people on farms that can do farming or raising of animals, but there's a lot of different things, small engine repair and collecting insects and stuff that somebody who lives in an apartment can do.
Yeah, I mean, I continually, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, other educators have talked about this all the time, but really educating the public about 4-H is more than just, sewing and cows and the fair. I encounter that too here in Warren County, because again, we do have a lot of families who do not have that 4-H background, or who are growing up in more of a suburban area. And I really encounter them in these youth in a lot of different settings. Camps are a good way to kind of introduce kids to 4-H. We do accept kids who are not in 4-H at 2 of the camps at least, and they get a window into what is 4-H, what kind of projects can you do, and some of the kids are the best advertisers for how they do that. So they share their resources with other kids, and that brings them into the program. Another way are through the schools. So the schools have lots of things that someone like me, an educator coming from the outside, can do. So financial literacy is a big part of that. We have a Real Money, Real World program where we educate kids about what are the things that are going to be coming in their lifetime that involve managing and budgeting money, which everyone has to do. So we just finished a program at one of our local junior highs yesterday that involved the simulation where kids get a chance to spend their paycheck and see how fast the money goes during the course of a month. And just learning from those things, but it's really a hands-on type of experience. So the schools are one way, camps are another, and really my involvement in community agencies, whether that be the Family and Children First Council or the local Teen Alliance Council, different types of avenues kind of get me into places where I can promote 4-H and what 4-H does.
How's the enrollment or membership in 4-H gone the past 20 years? Is it growing or is it dwindling? And because you have a lot of competition.
It depends on the county, I think, of course, and throughout the state. Ours is kind of held fairly steady, even though we are seeing a very reduction. I'm not sure the actual numbers of farmland and in our communities, as well as probably others around the state. But it's kind of holding in some ways that enrollment numbers. Even though we would like to bump that up, we again come up against these challenges of educating people about 4-H is more than just people being on farms. So that word's continued just kind of slowly moving out. We're trying to really promote all these different other options in the schools and other venues to increase that.
Do you find that as you're doing that, is more of the non-traditional 4-H activities like taking animals and things like that, is it growing way more than taking animals?
I wouldn't say growing in terms of an either or kind of a growth. We have still a very strong fair here. The sale is still continues to yield a lot of great results for youth and selling their animals and bringing animals to market. The difference, I think, in these days are really seeing youth expand how they go about the learning goals of 4-H and getting in there and getting their hands dirty. It's some version of really helping them to see beyond what's possible for them as youth, and the different vehicles that they use to gain leadership maybe are changing some. So it's not maybe the traditional animal that they would raise, but it would be a camp or some sort of leadership opportunity that I would offer the school that would get at some of the same kinds of things that youth development really are involved with.
It's not everybody's into sports.
It's true. Not everybody.
Yeah, and we do have a lot of sports that, Warren County is notorious for having lots and lots of soccer fields and different sporting venues that make it a real destination for people to come. Mm-hmm. So I try not to see it as competition for those youth. I think they're both very good at positive youth development, whether you're in sports or whether you're doing 4-H. And I think there's room for both to be there. So I think there's growth that can happen in both.
Steve, how do you go about doing this cultural education? Well, how do you introduce it to these students?
What's that?
How do you introduce it to these students and
Well,
and make
it's a
it
hard
interesting?
concept. I think for anybody, for adults or for youth, to try something new or different um, is a bit of a stretch. It takes some people thinking, okay, I'm okay with getting outside my comfort zone. There's a trip that I do to Washington D.C. It's called the Urban Immersion Project each year, and when I first started the concept and promoted that trip, I had to cancel it for 2 years straight because I didn't have enough participation for that. And it wasn't the cost, because it's only $170 for 4 days in Washington, D.C., and that's most everything included. So it wasn't cost prohibitive, but I think some of the things that I had offered to do, which were more service oriented and cultural oriented in DC, and not just your typical 8th grade trip and seeing the monuments, people weren't as quick to sign up for that because they just didn't know what to expect. But once a few people, I kind of call them my pioneers, signed up for it, and we did the trip, and they came back just really energized and really with kind of new eyes, fresh perspectives on things, and started to promote it to other youth in the county and around the state, then it began to grow. And so we're in our 6th year of doing this trip, and it's become very popular with youth to take advantage of this opportunity.
So what do you do when you're in DC? It's probably not swamp control.
No, we're doing a variety of things, and we do see some monuments, and we do see, some of the things that typical 8th graders would see during their 8th grade trip. But we actually stay in the city, so we're staying inside downtown at the basement of a church. We have cooking facilities, and we go grocery shopping, and we get into food groups. And so the youth are kind of automatically, or just right off the bat, thrown into this scenario where they're having to think about, okay, what are we going to cook for the rest of the group? And this formula, which is a little different than just giving them money and just letting them go shop, the formula of how I decide how much each group gets to cook is based on if we were all 15 of us or so were on food assistance, what would be the amount of money that they would actually get? So they start to immediately think about, how am I going to budget my money, or our money as a group, to be able to feed all these people based on this limited income. So they get a window into what it's like really to dive into that world where just resources aren't unlimited.
Interesting. And how do you bring that? Do you continue that education by bringing it back to the county? And what do you do in the county?
In some ways, yeah, and that's probably the harder part is, bringing that experience back. From what I've heard from past participants and how they've used that information, is it's kind of a seed that gets planted in them to then look at other opportunities that may come across their view in the future, whether it be through a school or through church or through some other organization. And then they're quicker to take advantage of those things. So they're getting outside of maybe this box that they were in for a while in their own county, and begin to look at things a little differently, and people differently too. And the reality is, in my mind, I'm helping them train to be able to know how to work with people and be with people who are different than they are. And if there's anything that I've learned about what employers want in the future, it's employees who can work with other people who are different. And so these are small ways to get at that, and to kind of start planting those seeds for how people can work together.
What kind of problems do you see that you have to overcome with working with other people? Because, I don't know, I kind of just view anybody in the social scale or anything as just, just another person.
Right. Yeah. And it becomes interesting, because one of the populations that we work with in DC are the people who are homeless. And so before I came into Extension, I worked for the National Coalition for the Homeless in Washington, and worked to do education about homelessness around the country to different groups, and whether it be churches or colleges or high schools, and actually had speakers who were homeless or formerly homeless to actually come and share their story with the group. And then afterwards, the group had a chance to ask questions to this panel, and really start to learn about some of the realities of homelessness that a lot of us, I think, have myths or have stereotypes of who homeless people actually are. And so once I think youth attend this trip and start to look at challenging some of their stereotypes of who people are, they started to rethink about, okay, well, who else do I have stereotypes about in the world, and how are those maybe need to be altered some to be more accurate. And I think that's an important part of growing up is being able to then see people more than just what we thought they were, but actually interacting and being able to know that more truthfully.
Yeah, I watched some YouTube interviews with some homeless people, and it was kind of, I don't know, funny or whatever that, everybody thinks, well, I'll go to McDonald's and get him a hamburger and he'll be good. And the guy was like, I'm tired of McDonald's hamburgers. I need socks.
Right,
I would love a pair of socks.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And one of the things that we do on the Washington D.C. trip is we do pack lunches for people who are homeless on the streets. And alongside of that, we have socks and we have toiletries, things like that. But the one thing that I really kind of counsel and educate the youth on is that asking a person if they want something or not is very important, and not just assuming that everybody needs exactly what I have to give.
Right.
So they start to learn about what help looks like for other people, and as opposed to just assuming that. And then that we talk about that at the end of that service project, about how that applies to their life back in Ohio. What people around them that maybe they didn't notice before that are struggling, financially or with food assistance, because we have a problem of homelessness in the rural areas as well, but people just don't see it. It's not as evident as when you go into a downtown or an urban center. So yeah, and I do have something, and I love to teach by modeling different things.
Yeah.
So I have a little puzzle for you, and I don't know if you can see this, but I want you to tell me when you can find the mistake in this picture. Just let me know if you found it. I guess this goes for viewers as well.
And mistake spelled wrong.
Do you see the mistake?
Yeah.
All right, so tell the viewers what the mistake is.
Mistake is spelled wrong.
Yeah.
No. Well, if you're looking,
two,
there are two thes in the sentence.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not.
And most people, when they
Can
look
you find
at
the
this,
D
they
mistake?
obviously focus on the numbers and the colors, and sometimes the words and how they're spelled, but they don't often see
That's
very obvious,
good.
which is
Yeah.
the two thes in the sentence.
Back to back.
And I kind of liken this to help youth understand this, is that our brains do it all the time. So we're missing things all the time that are around us, and it's very important to kind of stop sometimes and really look at, maybe I'm not seeing something here, and that goes for people and different situations. So just one of the ways that I like to get inside the youth's heads.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense that way.
Yeah, got me again. I've seen
I
that
never even
before.
seen it. Yeah,
I know.
I shoulda got it.
There's all kinds of things like this circulating
Yeah.
in the internet, and people can find these. And for me, it's about having youth just see things from a different perspective. And I, as the educator, am just kind of creating that space for that to happen. I'm not telling them what they should think or how they should think, but I'm just setting kind of that space or that stage for those learning moments to happen. And I see that very much as a part of the 4-H process and the 4-H motto of really getting there and learning something by doing it.
When you're doing all of this different cultural training, do you try to target a certain age group, or when do you really try to focus on this real hard? Because I know 4-Hers can start real early.
Yeah, it permeates through all the different programs that I do. And for example, camp counselor training, which I will have tonight. It's every Wednesday, and we start training in February and leads up to the camp happening in the end of July. I'm putting this in and through trainings all the time. So whether I'm working with sixth graders, which I teach a sixth grade class, kind of on the marketplace and looking at business skills, and then how to work with people who are maybe from other cultures and other countries, and kind of what that looks like in terms of introductions and basic things. In my team building and my leadership development with youth as well, and they're having to work together. It could be a team building where one has somewhat of a challenge, and other team members have to accommodate that challenge. One team member could be blindfolded as they do that. So it's getting to really think about how do you work together to accomplish the tasks at hand, and then I tie that back into to culture and and culture is everywhere. It's not just in other countries.
Do you try to take this into a school setting all the time, into a school during school day, or is this
Yeah,
mostly after school?
I do, and that's one of the benefits of being a second 4-H educator is I have the ability to go into the schools quite a bit. I just finished a 10-part series with intervention study hall in our local Lebanon school, and with 7th and 8th graders, really teaching them about workforce preparation skills. And part of those lessons really involved not only just budgeting and what kinds of skills are important, the soft skills that are important in a job, but how do you see yourself fitting into and adding to the workplace, whether that's right after high school or whether they continue on to college. But these youth were kind of identified as being high risk of dropping out of high school. And so the effort is to try to help them think about what's their future going to look like. And in working with youth, their future is not something they think about quite often. It's more of the next day or the next week or the summer. But a lot of the programs and things that I do really hopefully helps them to think about, okay, how is this going to serve me in the future, or how is it not going to serve me in the future for what I want to get out of life.
You run into a lot of drug problems, because that's one of the things that employers have a problem with finding is people that are off drugs.
Yeah, and I don't deal as much with that. We do have some agencies here in some kind of collaborations here in the county that work toward more prevention efforts for how to target youth and the things that help, that they would make a decision to go into drugs. Kind of talking about that. How do you arrest that beforehand? And so I deal primarily in the area of prevention as well. So I'm not looking at the intervention strategies as much as maybe juvenile court or some other people's, but I'm looking at what kind of factors lead into healthy decision making for youth, and to where they wouldn't have to make those choices for getting into drugs.
No, I guess I was kind of saying things that you would stumble upon. You start saying going down one road, then somebody, a child says, "Oh, wait a minute, mom and dad or my brother or something is." On that, and you just stumble over it.
Yeah, I mean, I do hear those stories, not maybe as often as some of the other agencies, but for me, it's about getting as many assets as I can into a child's life that are kind of protective factors for when those decisions do come up of whether to use or to not use, that they have more support around not using or choosing those healthy behaviors. But it's an issue all over Ohio. I know in terms of the opioids and other factors, and I am on some committees that work with that, but just not as much on the intervention side.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like a lot of other things. I always preach that tired dogs are good dogs, and busy people are out of trouble.
Yeah, and we do have some 4-Hers who are extremely busy.
Yeah. Now,
Lost my microphone. We do have some people who are really busy, and they're in the sports world, and they're in just all kinds of stuff. So that does, I think, help in terms of not making those bad choices.
Where do you see not only your county maybe of 4-H, but what about the rest of 4-H in general? Do you see it going in a different angle in the future, or do you see it changing much?
I'm hopeful, and I think I say that because I know that I work with a lot of great people around the state who are great 4-H educators in other counties, and they have a real passion for wanting to make sure that 4-H not only just survives, but it really thrives in the place that they are. By going into the schools, being parts of coalitions and collaborations that work with other youth development agencies. So I'm hopeful that that message of 4-H is more than just kind of what people have traditionally thought of it as, that message continues on and will get stronger. I consider myself a person who kind of plants seeds in youth and adults, really, that hopefully later on, once that seed gets watered, it bears fruit in the future, so that it will be more positive.
So, Steve, we got just a couple of minutes. As we go through this, and with the future coming like it is, all of the technology that has come about, do you see more technology in the future of 4-H? And can it be something that's online that, what everybody is pushing towards, things online?
That's a great
24/7.
question, and I deal with that myself, just in thinking about how to incorporate more technology in the trainings that I do. Although, kind of ironically, a lot of the training that I deal with are very person-related skills. They're very, life skills of how do you shake hands? How do you look a person in the eye? How do you make a good first impression?
Right.
Which are so important, I think, in the workplace and really just everyday life. So I struggle with that. How do you incorporate technology into something just as basic as knowing how to interact with people? I do know that at camps, I do take the teenagers and the campers' cell phones away, so they don't have that access through the week. And at first, the teens are just absolutely oh my gosh, life is going to end if I don't have my cell phone.
Right.
But they realize after the course of the week goes on that, wow, it's kind of nice not to have that phone right at my hip that I just grab and scroll through. That it really is a freedom in some ways. And the same for my trips to DC and to Puerto Rico. They have very limited access to those devices. That's a challenge. Yeah. But I tend to side on the interpersonal relationship skills that people tend to develop without those things.
Yeah, because it's socialization has, I think, gone down since people have this between them and the other people that they are talking to. And
and I can say contrarily, we have a couple of people working in our office who are very tech savvy and have brought a Warren County 4-H app to our county that will really help with FAIR and with results and with people being connected, as well as getting program information just right from your phone. So there are tremendously good uses and great uses of technology that that I'm not as strong in, but I think having that balance of strong technology and good uses for it, as well as good interpersonal skills, maybe is the key for how we move forward.
So if you wanted to get your child into 4-H or into a camp first, where should you go?
Well, the county extension office is the first place. So for our county, they would call the Warren County Extension office and ask how to join 4-H. You can join 4-H any time of the year. Although to compete into the fair, you have to join by April 1st. So it is too late for that deadline. But to get into camps, you'd also call the extension office as kind of a first stop. Or you can visit our website as well at warren.osu.edu. That's really the first way to do it. And then we can plug you into a local club to get involved with based on what your interest area is.
Awesome. Well, Mike, we're out of time. Steve, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
And we'll bring you back on sometime soon and follow up on all the leadership things that we got going on there.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me.
Until next time, we will talk to everyone later.